never about arrogance. It was never about
In whatever way possible, we need Christian leaders who have a good understanding of the Bible, to have a good understanding of what's going on in our nation as well, and then be able to communicate that effectively to the youth at the same time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're back on the show. The Jacob York Show is up and running once again. I'm glad you guys are with us. Join us tonight for a very, very fun episode talking about Mr. Mamdani in New York City and socialism as a whole. Joining me tonight, I've got two great guests. The first being Mr. Benaiah Collender, who you guys are all too familiar with after our Candace Owens episode. Benaiah, how are you tonight?
Doing well. I'm doing well. It's good to be on the show.
We're back. And this one, I mean, believe it or not, it could be more controversial or less controversial, depending on how you look at it.
I think it's only controversial if you live in New York or
Yeah.
Soviet Russia. So I think we're good.
I think we're good. Also joining us tonight is my chapter at Olivet Nazarene University, my Turning Point chapter. Tyler Schappaugh is the vice president of that chapter. And what a great guy he is. Tyler, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Glad to be here. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Jacob. Super excited to talk about this hot topic right now in America and in New York. So glad to be here.
I'm happy you guys are both on the show, and I think this one's going to be interesting, and I think it's good that we have a bit of widespread knowledge between the three of us. Of course, we are young men. We are young men. However, I think we all did our research. We all did our due diligence, and I think we understand the topic as best as we can. So let's get into it. There's this guy named Zoran Mamdani who took office in 2026, and he is a self-proclaimed socialist. And why is this bad? Why are conservatives flipping out about socialism, a socialist taking office in New York City? What's going on? How about Benaiah? Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I think that it has been very interesting to see how far the left is testing their follower base. It's very interesting to see the directions they're heading. We start off with them pushing a socialist candidate and starting to push towards socialist ideologies. And then they put a guy with a Nazi tattoo up and see if they'll vote for him. And they do, which really makes you think, is the other side thinking critically? And if they're buying into socialism, I would argue no. I mean, we'll talk about it more today, but socialism, in my opinion, is a cancer to the American dream. Socialism in and of itself removes the very idea, the very dream that all of us aspire to, and many of the people who legally come to our country aspire to. And really how it does that is it removes the ability for individual excellence, for individual accomplishment, and puts so much power in the hands of the government, way more than I think they should have. But I'm very interested to hear my friend here's opinion as well.
Tyler, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting the direction we're seeing, kind of like Benaiah was saying, the Democratic Party move towards kind of these very radical socialist candidates. And it's very surprising and shocking because for the longest time, socialism and communism was kind of the sworn enemy to American values, American democracy. And we fought a lot of wars, the Cold War, and fought in a lot of conflicts to keep socialism and keep communism out of these countries. And now we're kind of letting it creep in to our democracy. And I think Benaiah's point on when he says it is a cancer to the American values that we traditionally hold so dear, like the American dream and so on.
Really well said.
I'd actually love to ask a question with what you just said, because you bring up this excellent point that socialism goes against democracy. But the recent movement that Mamdani is a part of has been called the DSA, the Democratic Socialist. So I'd love to maybe dive into this idea of, can socialism be democratic?
It's a great question. And I think let's
Yeah.
even go a step forward to start. What is socialism at a basic level? Because we've used three words so far. Okay, we've used three terms, I should say. We've used socialism, we've used communism, and then we've used now democratic socialism. So I think it's important that we define all three of those and understand, okay, so if we're going to understand democratic socialism, let's understand what socialism is first. So does anyone want to, take a jab at that really quick before I give a definition?
I mean, I think socialism, how I define it, it's first off, I mean, I do think it's a pathway to communism, but it's kind of those first steps of getting to a society where private property is abolished, and then there's kind of a communal ownership of goods among the people. And that's, I'd say, kind of the socialism's taking some of those steps to move towards communism is what I'd say.
And I would even say in a self-proclaimed way, the Communist Manifesto even claims that. That's not even a hidden fact that socialism is the gateway to communism. That is a self-proclaimed fact in the Communist Manifesto. Benaiah, anything you want to add on?
Yeah, I think the big term that I would want to throw out is government regulated, where everything is government regulated. And I think that the other thing I would want to throw out with socialism, before your clear definition, of course, is power away from the people. And I think we'll dive into that more in a bit.
Yeah, the thing that I was going to say is the government owns the means of production. That's like a really simplistic way of saying that. So now that we have socialism defined, Tyler, why don't you take a jab at communism? Like, what is the difference between two things? We're saying socialism is the gateway to communism. Okay, now what is communism?
Ultimately, communism is kind of that utopian final step. I don't think it's actually ever been achieved. Some people would claim maybe it has been, but it's where all private property has been abolished, and there's that communal, collective ownership of property among everyone. And that, I don't think we've actually gotten to that utopian point. I mean, you call the Soviets communists, sometimes communist Russia. They weren't really communist because they never really made it out of some of those steps in socialism to get to actual communism. But that's how I define it.
Benaiah, you want to add anything onto that?
It's really well put. Well, I got
right. All right. So now
I felt like becoming
along.
Pentecostal and amening.
All right. So moving on from that, let's now talk about democratic socialism, which is funny because I was actually just watching a Charlie Kirk clip right before this talking about democratic socialism and how people will claim, oh, well, it's not really socialism because it's democratic socialism and it's a short form of it. But what's funny is Lenin, Mao, all of these guys use the term democratic socialism as well. This is not like this is some new, like, oh, we're taking a little bit of the idea of what socialism is, and now it's this brand new democratic socialism. It's not bad. Democratic socialism is not bad. No, like they use that term as well. It just more speaks into a specific part of the overarching umbrella of socialism.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the biggest issue when we look at trying to say that socialism can be democratic is, I think Friedrich Heil approaches this really well in his book, The Use of Knowledge in Society. Basically, what he says in this book is that the price system of money that we see in capitalism, like the price system, it's not just about money. It's how society communicates information and needs. I think that the price system is a necessary part of democracy. And we can dive into that more, but if we remove that necessary form of communication and information, we actually lose the ability to work in a democracy.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's very ironic, like the democratic socialism, that those two words are put next to each other, because one of you mentioned it earlier, how like the whole point is to get government control over so many aspects of our lives. And that's because I think it's F.A. Hayek, in famous economist, writes that socialism requires central planning of the economy, which puts immense power into the government's hands. And that's then when that power is really actually never given up. And that's then when you start to see these tyrannical governments take over in Russia, because you centralize all the power and abolish the citizens' rights. And then, yeah, very quickly, you no longer have a democracy.
That's really well said. And I think what's interesting is socialism, in really basic idea, the idea and why it's attractive to the few is because what it does is they think it takes the poor and eliminates the poor class, which that's not true. It actually just eliminates those who are in the upper class and in the middle class, and it just sweeps them all into the poor class, into the lower class. And so everybody becomes poor except for the very, 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 very few who become extraordinarily wealthy throughout this process. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Tyler, and how it puts so much power into the pockets of those very, very few. And instead of the gap being this much, hey, this is the really wealthy people, and then this is everybody else. Now this is everybody else. And now this is the really, really wealthy people right here, except for those people also control all of the power and all the government at the same time.
100%.
Yeah, totally.
But why do you
Yeah,
guys think this system fails? Because we can sit here and say, oh, well, government having power is bad. But I would love to dive into the actual damage that causes for us. Because we can say, oh, we lose rights, but how did that impact our day-to-day life? What's the negative?
Ty, you want to go for it first?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. I'd say, I mean, obviously, individual rights and freedoms are a lot of what we've built our society in the West upon. And it's kind of, giving people those freedoms. And that's then, I'd say, important when it plays, I think you mentioned it earlier, into like the free market, the choice to choose, and that kind of drives the market. And with socialism, you don't have that because it's all regulated by the government, and it takes away the different incentives and like free market enterprise for other companies and entrepreneurs to kind of come in and create new products and drive the economy. And we've seen that really bring so many people out of poverty in the West because of free market economies. And I think socialism is just the total opposite of that, and we've not seen it create wealth like the free market has.
And that's a really good point. I think the reason that I love that so much is that in capitalism, there are winners and there are losers. You can, in a capitalist environment, you can be a loser. You can. If you do not work hard, if you do not, put yourself out there, if you do not take risks, you can be a loser in that. But you can also win. You can also achieve the American dream. You can have a fresh new beginning. You can work hard. You can have, good ideas, and you can be successful. In socialism, which is the gateway to communism, and then overall in communism, what happens is you eliminate that opportunity. There's no winners and losers anymore. It's only participators. And that's how they would love to frame it, is that the participators we're all winning now. Like, we're all participating. There's no classes. It's a classless society, and we're all winners. But it's actually the opposite. It's actually that everybody's a loser except for those people who are actually in power and who are also the very, 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 very wealthy instead of just the wealthy now.
Yeah, I think
totally.
That's a great
Very
point.
well said.
And I think one of the things that you guys mentioned is this idea of incentive. I think when we lean into socialism, incentive is killed. And when incentive is killed, what ends up happening is that this pursuit of greatness, of innovation, of improvement, all of these things are removed. Because if I no longer can achieve greatness, to move up the classes, to better my life, then what's the point of this pursuit of excellence, of innovation? What's the point of building businesses? What's the point of contributing something to society? Because there's no gain for me. Right. I think if we look back through history and how influential America has been in the innovation of the world, it is because people had the ability to become something greater. And I think when we remove that, innovation dies, improvement dies. And I think that we've seen that in countries like Venezuela, in the Soviet Union, in Cuba, North Korea, all of that. And I'm afraid of that happening to America as well. And I think, speaking to your audience, we love to throw around buzzwords in the political world like rights and free market, which are all very good terms, and you should learn the meaning of them because it's important. But to speak to the audience, if we buy into socialism, you will lose the very innovation that inspires you to keep living in life, the very pursuit of something greater, the very pursuit of a better life for yourself, a better house, a better car, a better position for your family. And at that point, what are we doing?
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think also, like, you're hitting on this topic of, like, this is why a lot of conservatives and a lot of Republicans also, like, don't like a lot of free things in our society. We don't like just giving out, free handouts and then having taxpayers cover them, because we want people to fight against each other and compete against each other. That's like when, let me use a sports analogy because I'm a baseball player. That's why if you want a good sports team, if I was a college coach and I was recruiting my team, I want more than one good player at each position. I would love to have 3 players deep who are all good, not just because if one player goes down, then 2 are, there to take his place, but because then that creates competition between the 2. And when you have competition between the 2, what ends up happening is they have to get better in order to earn that spot. And that's exactly what we need in our markets, in our society, is that the production and the people competing within that production, whether that be stores or business owners or whatever, they have to compete against each other, because if it's just one set model for everything, then there's no incentive to be great or grand. It's just to be the bare minimum. That's what happens. You end up with the bare minimum and everything. And that's what is kind of what you're getting at, Benaiah, is that you need that competition, that driving force against each other, so that it elevates the game. The game has to be elevated. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you get a really crippled society.
100%. I mean, Venezuela went from being like the 5th richest, and I need to fact check this, but I believe it was like the 5th richest nation in the world a number of years ago. And then socialism was introduced. And now look at it.
Yeah. It's just sad. But let's talk more, because we keep saying, socialism has failed, communism has failed. For those of you guys who do not know, like, hey, why was the Soviet Union bad? I think that's important that we talk through, let's talk through the history. Where did this socialism, communism, Marxist ideology come from? And Tyler, I know you're a history nerd, so I'm going to let you go first and kind of set the stage for us. Where did this begin? What is this term Marxism, socialism, communism? Where did this begin?
Yeah, so really all these terms began in the mind of Karl Marx and then expanded into his writings. And I mean, famously, he wrote the Communist Manifesto. He was also funded primarily by Friedrich Engels, who was kind of his main associate in getting a lot of this ideology and Marxist literature out. Ironically, Engels was actually a factory owner, I believe. So he's profiting off of free market economy, while Marx is then writing his doctrines on Marxism, why the free market is bad. So I kind of find that ironic that the guy funding Marx is benefiting from capitalism. So that always cracks me up a bit.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But you take it from there.
Yeah. So Marx is where it started, and then we kind of see it begins to trial and error in different pockets of history. And it grew into this big movement, and I think Tyler has more information for you guys on this, but it kind of grew and really took traction in Russia. And Jacob or Tyler, do you want to tell them about how bad that was?
Yeah, I mean, even before that, we could even just go more simply there. So what ends up happening is Marx and Engels, they combined for the Communist Manifesto, and the idea of Marxism starts. Okay, and then Lenin takes that version of Marxism and kind of twists it with a couple of his own ideas and ends up seizing control of Russia with the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, I believe. When that happens, that is really the beginning of the Soviet Union. Lenin overthrowing Russia at the time, and then through the Bolshevik Revolution, and then the Soviet Union then comes in place in 1922. It's established in 1922, okay? And Stalin takes control of that in 1924 because I believe Lenin passed away like a year before that, and that's what gave Stalin the reins. And then that's what ends up becoming communist Russia. That's what the Soviet Union ends up becoming. So that's kind of your wide range. Okay, how did we get there? Okay, how did we get to communist, the Soviet Union? How did we get there? That's what happened. It was Marx, Engels. They had the ideas. Lenin put that into place throughout the Bolshevik Revolution, and then we have Stalin taking control over that. And really what ends up happening is right away, as soon as Stalin hits the scene, there is no private capital. They control the entire means of production. And what ends up happening actually really early on in Stalin's reign is because of how difficult that plays in the agriculture, because when you control everything and there's no more human capital, what happened was there was actually a huge famine that led to a lot of lives lost really early on in Stalin's reign as well. And then later on, obviously, you see the executions and the beatings and how incredibly terrible it was. But yeah, there's a reason that a lot of people say that 100 million people over the last 150 years have died through the hands of Marxism, communism. And yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the history for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is very interesting, especially when you were talking about Russia and how Lenin takes power. I mean, kind of a warning to the United States where we are now. Socialism and Marxism started out like as a small thing in Russia. I mean, you had Lenin around the turn of the century, I think. He was just meeting with small groups of people in these basements, in these coffee shops, spreading his ideas. And then eventually that started spreading to a lot of the laborers and factory workers. And then next thing you know, the communists and the Bolsheviks have overthrown the Tsar in Russia, which, the Russian Empire had existed, I think, for almost like 1,000 years at that point. So like they totally destroyed a major empire in human history. And it started out very small. So I think kind of a warning to us in the US is to not take this lightly, that, you do need good ideas to prevail to fight off when socialist ideas are starting to form in the public square, and defend kind of our ideas of why free markets are good and why socialism can become bad. And like you said, start killing off so many people and how fast it can go poorly.
Go for it, Benaiah.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we bring up socialism in this conversation to communism, it was Karl Marx who said that for capitalism to go from capitalism to communism, there is this transition period of government and reform change. And he said the very thing that happens during that movement is a change from capitalism to socialism to communism. And so to the watchers who are watching this and going, oh, well, they're talking about communism. We're not talking about communism. Communism, the guy who made communism said that socialism was the first step to getting there. So that's why we're taking this so seriously. It would be like if a murderer said you should go down this street to get murdered. We're trying not to go down that street, guys.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think a lot of what people don't really realize is that in the Communist Manifesto, they kind of talk about like how, like the game plan, they literally strategize like, hey, this is how this is supposed to work. And obviously it never has really long term. The Soviet Union was the closest we've gotten to that, and it was terrible. But the reason that I say that is because it's win small at the beginning. That's kind of the idea. It's like, hey, we're going to win small. We're going to win elections. We're going to start, rallies and protests. And that's what happened. Like, that's legitimately how it happens. And then eventually through socialism, then they overthrow. And then there's actually like a change in that. I don't think that could quite happen in America where they could just overthrow the government. Like all the different socialist people, I don't think they could overthrow the government. But what happens is like you have people like Mamdani, which we're going to get more to in a minute. But you have people like Mamdani. Okay, they won an election. Okay, now somebody else won an election. Now you see a couple different socialists, and now it's becoming more popular. And then overall, then the economy and the market goes from free markets and it goes from capitalism. Then now we're solely based on socialism. And when that happens, then it's maintaining that power. Just as like Republicans and Democrats, they want to maintain people in office. What ends up happening is on a broad scope. Now we're maintaining socialism or socialists in power and communists in power. And what ends up happening is then like what happened in the Soviet Union is then they start eliminating people based off of whether they're going to agree with how this works or not. And so it goes from, government to like super authoritarian really, really quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you said something that was really important. It started with small wins. And as I look at the American political scape, I feel like socialism is starting to have small wins. We've seen Mamdani grow in popularity and his ideas grow in popularity. And I think it's one because of a lack of critical thinking, but I think we can all agree Mamdani has an infectious rhetoric. He's an interesting person to watch. He's an interesting person to follow. And I think we've seen on social media that even people outside of New York are starting to be interested in Mamdani, interested in his ideas. And to me, I look at that and I go, that's a small win. They're starting to get the small wins. And I think it's very interesting to see the lack of critical thinking because if we look at what Mamdani is doing work-wise in New York City, he's actually not making great choices, but they're making these small wins. And so I'd love to dive into what Mamdani is doing and talk about how it's not really that great. So we have a lot to start from, but should we start on the rent?
Yeah, you go ahead. Take it away.
Okay. So Mamdani proposed a rent freeze, as many of you guys are aware. I don't think this is a wise decision, and there's a few reasons why, and I know Tyler also has some really great points on this, but essentially if we freeze rent, saying that rent is going to stay at the same price for about a year to 2 years, depending on the lease, and it can go up during that amount of time, what happens? Well, that doesn't mean that prices of maintaining the building or insurance or staffing costs change at all for the owner. It just means that the profit is less. So what does that mean? Well, that puts the developers and the owners in an interesting position where, one, they're not going to be buying more buildings. All of a sudden, real estate is not an interesting market to get into because there is no profit for them. The repairs and the actual qualities of the building is going to decrease because as the taxes and insurance and labor's costs go up, well, they're going to put that off because they're not making enough profit to pay for it. And so we're going to see building decay. We're going to see actually lack of available homes for renters. So we're going to decrease the housing pool, in my opinion. And then I think there's two things that people don't talk about as much, which are the trapped tenants, where there's these people who have an affordable home because the rent has frozen. And so all of a sudden, they're not looking to move to a bigger home, even if they need to. Job opportunities may come up, but they're not in a position to move because they need to stay in this one place, which I think is a very dangerous thing. And I think we might end up seeing in these certain areas, they propose the rent freeze, you're going to have families that are way too big for homes because the idea of moving is too scary. And then it's also going to be very hard for newcomers. But I know that Tyler has even more insight on the economical model of this all.
Yeah, so you made a lot of great points, actually, that I even had myself. I actually have a little image here I'd like to share. I got it from Marginal Revolution University, a video of theirs I was watching on YouTube. And it's from when Ontario, Canada implemented housing rent control. You can see right there with the red line. that is non-rent controlled housing. And it stays pretty steady, especially after that rent control begins. But then you see down in the apartments that were affected by the rent control policies, even before the rent control began, when it was just debated, the construction and number of new units that were being built by developers drastically drops off. So this is just kind of what could happen and like some evidence to back what we're saying, and of how developers aren't going to want to build new apartments if they know there's no profit in them because the rent's going to be controlled. And that's going to actually further hurt the housing market, because that further hurts the supply when demand's already high, which is just not going to help anything at all.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you say that too, because we're talking about how, you know what, they're controlling the rent, they're controlling that market, and the idea is to, you know, the economy will fluctuate. But it's funny because they literally in New York City, as of I believe June, Fox News and a lot of other media outlets put out an article saying that literally the renting in New York City has hit an all-time high. It has literally never been higher. The cost to rent in New York City has never, ever been higher, which is just funny because like you see like, okay, you see the ideas, you see it put into practice, but then you see like how it's actually working, and it's not at all. It's not working at all. And I think that's a huge part about the socialism and communism, is that they have all these ideas and it sounds great because it's total equality is what they're painting it. They paint it as total equality. But when it comes down to it, it's really not. It's just a bunch of people losing and 1% of people winning by an astronomical amount. That's what ends up happening once you get to the communist stage, and you see it on very small levels. And that's the problem, because it's on small levels, those losses seem like it's on small levels too. But in reality, those losses will turn into really, really big losses really fast.
Well, and I think something
totally.
I think as we look at what's happening with the New York rent rising, I think it's almost a fear response to what happened with the certain sections in which rent was froze. So just to clarify for people, all the rent in New York City was not frozen. It was in specific areas. But if I'm a real estate developer or real estate owner, and all of a sudden rent is frozen for a few of my properties, well, I have to make up the income somewhere else. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to raise the rent on the other properties that I can to make up for my loss in that area. And so I think that might be something we're seeing. It might also be real estate and landlords going, oh, shoot, I got to start cranking these prices up in case it happens to me next. And I think those aren't things I have enough evidence to say for conclusively, but I think there's something to consider about what's the effect of the rent being frozen on the rest of the real estate market in New York City.
Tyler, want to go ahead?
Yeah. I mean, I think those are great points. I'd also kind of argue that there is some points in which I would agree with the other side that, yes, I think the housing affordability crisis is a problem, but I'd argue that there's better ways to go about it. Actually, if you look at the major manufacturing industries in the US since the 1970s, the housing industry is the one major industry that has not seen a major increase in its market. It's actually seen a decline. And that's because of government regulations and red tape. So I'd argue, instead of trying to control and manufacture an outcome with rent controls, you need local governments to cut red tape and certain zoning regulations to be able to provide more housing and build more housing. And that's how you can combat this affordability crisis. I don't think it's these socialist policies of controlling rent and trying to manufacture some sort of outcome.
That's a really good point. I think also another thing that plays into this is Mamdani has said that he wants to be a safe city for illegal immigrants. And so when you, once again, cities are already a very heavily populated place. It's already a very heavily populated place. And then you add in all these people who have come to the country over the last, 4 years illegally. And what happens in that, and then you decide to be a safe city in that, yeah, we're not going to allow them or allow, law enforcement to come in and remove those people, then that's just basic supply demand. When there's a influx of people who all need places to stay within your city and you've claimed to be a safe city, and then these people are there, then you need more places to actually house these people. And when that's the case, and then you have all the other things that you just discussed, Tyler, and all the other things that you just discussed, Benaiah, then that's on top of it, then yes, of course, these prices are going to get jacked up so fast.
Yeah, and it's
for
really
sure.
unfortunate because there's been headlines saying that these illegal migrants that are coming in are getting these giant government stipends and cards, and then so they're able to pay for their housing, but then the everyday citizen is going to see these prices continue to go up, and their wages aren't going up with it, so that's going to just lead to further affordability crisis in the housing market there.
Oh, for sure. And I think with Mamdani's plan to adjust for this, I mean, we've seen what he's been doing with his proposal to raise minimum wage to $30 an hour, which, as somebody who, while I was in high school and early college, worked a minimum wage job, sounds great until you actually look at the math of it all, right? Because I'd love $30 an hour, don't get me wrong. But I mean, the Congressional Budget Office has multiple times talked about the negative effects of a radical increase in minimum wage. What they said was that when wages increase, what that does is it increases the cost for the employer. It increases the cost to produce the product. So what happens? Well, if the increase for the cost to produce the product, as that goes up, well, that increases not only the cost of the product, but also it decreases the amount of jobs because they're going to be employing less people now because it's such a cost to employ. And so all of a sudden, we're going to see less jobs in New York, and we're going to see a higher cost for goods on top of raised rent prices, which sucks.
Tyler, you want to add anything?
Yeah, you make a good point that when you raise the minimum wage, it sounds like a good idea because you're like, oh yeah, workers are going to get paid more for their services. That's all fine. But then, that brings burden on their employers. And then, you've probably seen this throughout other states as minimum wage has increased at like fast food restaurants. What now has replaced what used to be several people running cash registers? Well, now it's just a kiosk because you don't have to pay a kiosk minimum wage. And what happens is then usually minimum wage workers are, like you said, teenagers or low skill or uneducated workers. They're just going to be cut by their employers because their employers aren't going to want to pay them for their services if you hike that minimum wage up so much.
Yeah, and I think right now you're actually seeing that. Well, one, because AI is rapidly taking over a lot of those minimum wage jobs as it is, okay? So there's like so many different like moving parts to this, which I think is so interesting because Benaiah's bringing one thing, then Tyler's saying next, and then I'm about to bring in a whole nother conversation to this, okay? So then AI is taking all these jobs, and you've actually seen the unemployment rate go up since Trump took office because that is happening, and that continues to happen. And that's not because of Trump necessarily. That's just because the rapid evolving of AI. But along with that, what happens is, okay, yeah, so minimum wage goes up, right? So then you have AI taking over a lot of these jobs, but then also we are still removing illegal immigrants from our country. So that has happened. We've had almost 1 million forcible deportations, and then I think we have over 2 million now on record of illegal immigrants just leaving the country. So that's just 3 million people right there. That's 3 million people who are also coming off of the labor force. So then you have AI taking over jobs, you have people leaving the country, and you're raising minimum wages where, businesses don't want to pay someone who's not going to do a great job, and then businesses not make as much money. So then all those things mixed together, it creates a very unsafe economic environment very quickly.
100%. And I think to talk one of the proposed solutions that Mamdani had was, I'm sure you all have seen the grocery stores, which are very funny because I actually just got the opportunity to talk to Joe Fuller about this briefly tonight. We were talking about Mamdani's policies with grocery stores and how he's providing this 30% discount on certain items. Well, here's the thing. Grocery stores actually lose a lot of money on the majority of their products. Where they do make money is the markup on certain products. That high markup is what Mamdani is getting rid of. For example, meat is one of the things that's marked up more. And so he's giving this 30% discount on the thing that gets the grocery stores enough profit to function. Because grocery stores make a very, very, very small amount of profit. And so all of a sudden he's taking that away. Okay, well, where's that money coming from? Well, that has to come from tax dollars. And so I find it really interesting how much money, how many tax dollars are being poured into this. So it's $70 million of taxpayer dollars up front just to build these things. That's not even a single day of function. That's just the upfront cost to build it. 70 million tax dollars for something that Walmart actually competes with pretty well, and if not, their prices are better. So we have that. And that's not even counting the work. And so then all this food is being paid for with tax dollars. And since it's not a private run business where there's competition and trying to meet the needs of the people, all of a sudden it doesn't matter what they stock it with. When you go to Walmart, Jacob, what's one of your go-to snacks? Like what's the go-to baseball snack?
I'm a big Goldfish guy or a Cheez-It guy on the road. Either one can't go wrong, in my opinion.
That's my boy right there. That's my boy. Okay. So you go into the store, you buy Cheez-Its or Goldfish. Well, the guy keeping stock will see, okay, we are selling our Goldfish and Cheez-Its more. So next time they go to buy product to stock their store, they're going to go, okay, we need more Goldfish and Cheez-Its because those are selling. But then they're going to look and say, Dots pretzels were a big thing in 2020. It ain't selling no more. So we're gonna stock less of that. And now they're stocking more of what you want. So when you go to the store, you can buy the food you want. But if this grocery store is run by the government, and so it doesn't rely on paying attention to what's selling and what's not, you're going to go to the store and every time they're going to be out of Cheez-Its and Goldfish, but have plenty of Dots pretzels because they don't care about the competition. And I think that's something that that many people don't consider in this conversation is how much the market is actually catered to us. And when we remove our involvement in the market, it's actually no longer going to benefit us in the way we want.
Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point. You talked about like the immense tax dollars that are going to be spent on this. I think it was Milton Friedman who famously said there's no such thing as a free lunch. And that's because someone's always going to have to bear the cost. And I mean, Mamdani, it's not only the grocery stores, it's like he's trying to do free buses. And somebody's going to bear that cost. And it's going to be the taxpayer. The taxpayer is going to see a hike in their taxes and further decrease the wages that they're taking home at the end of the day. And I argue that, high taxes also hurt the economy because that's less money that you as a buyer are putting then back into the market. So, yeah, I mean, spending all this money on then these grocery stores that don't know how to watch the signals of competition and the free market just seems like a terrible idea to me.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I like the point about the tax dollars because, Benaiah's running through like, oh, they're dropping this like that by 30%, like those high-end products that the grocery stores make money off of. So we're dropping that. And so it's like, okay, great. Like, as the consumer, that means I'm just going to spend less money. But it's funny because as the consumer, our taxes are actually just paying for that. It's just like so backwards if you think about it. Like it makes no sense. And it just sounds like honestly kind of stupid. With the little time we have remaining, what I want to talk about is And actually, Benaiah, me and you talked about this a little bit on our last show together, but we talked about how there's a divide in the conservative movement currently, right? There's people trusting conspiracy theories. There's people, this, that, the other thing. Okay. I think that's been true for a while. There's always going to be more conservative people and less conservative people, like the soft conservatives, as I refer to them as. Okay. I think you're starting to finally see that in the Democrat Party with the Democrat Socialists. You have a guy like who I think would be a terrible situation if he was elected as president of the United States, and Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom would not ascribe to a lot of these things. And I think you're seeing that division a little bit. And actually, there's a lot of reports coming on saying that, like, in the midterm, socialists might not do as well because of how much infighting there is on potentially the Democratic side as well. How, yes, it is growing rapidly, but there are also plenty of people on the Democrat side who are like, hey, I don't stand for this. This is wrong. This is messed up. I stand for a lot of messed up stuff, but I don't stand for that messed up stuff. And I want you guys to be able to comment on that. Tyler, go ahead first.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely tension, like kind of what we've seen on the conservative side, on the Democrat side. I was just watching a video yesterday of Bill Maher, and very famous liberal Democrat, and he just despises the Democratic Socialists and their plan to abolish like the Senate and the Supreme Court, and he thinks like ultimately he totally despises socialism and can't believe what it's doing to the Democratic Party that he's been home to for so long. I mean, I think I even saw him say, if these Democratic Socialists keep moving the way they do and taking over the Democratic Party and trying to put a Democratic Socialist up in 2028, the Republicans might have his vote. And that's coming from a super liberal and progressive guy in Bill Maher. So you really do see that infighting in the Democratic Party, and it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out in 26 here coming up midterms, and then also in 2028.
Benaiah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point. I saw the same clip where Bill Maher said that his vote was up for grabs. And I think that's something we need to listen to as conservatives and as Republicans. There are votes up for grabs right now. And so what does that mean for us? Well, if there's Democrats who are questioning their party, it is our chance to stand on logic, to stand on reason, and to present an answer for them. So kind of to follow on the conversation that Jacob and I had the last time we were on, this is not the time to buy into conspiracy theories. This is the time to think critically. This is the time to present solid answers and solid evidence for our stances, and to have good, solid stances, because there are votes up for grabs. And I think that's really important for us to recognize. This is a very important time in American history, and we need to act.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, I kind of want to go through a hypothetical as the last thing that we do for tonight. So obviously when Tyler runs for president in 2048 and Benaiah's his VP and I'm, Speaker of the House at this point, basically what I want to run through is, okay, so if Tyler, let's say you're running for president, and then Benaiah, you're running for president, and then I'll give my answer as well. Okay, so how are you making Bill Maher vote for you? That's really what I want you to run through. How are you going to win his vote? Okay, you know what? He's not for all the socialism. He thinks all this sucks. And you know what? We do too. But then also at the same time, we're still a crazy amount in debt. Home ownership is still incredibly high, at an incredibly high price. There's still things to be done in our country. So now let's go through some hypotheticals in that. How can Republicans do better now? So we see it, the Democratic Socialist side being really, really bad. But now we need to be able to not soften up and not become more liberal, but also let's do things a little bit more right. And I don't mean like right, left. I mean like correct. Let's correctly do some things. So Tyler, I want you to go first. Like, what are some things that you'd be like, hey, this is what we haven't done that we need to?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when trying to maybe find some common ground with someone like Bill Maher, I mean, there are definitely some conservative points that we wouldn't agree on. I don't think we'd agree on abortion or maybe homosexual marriage. But I think there's certain things, like you were saying, affordability and just kind of common sense policies that we can agree on that these Democratic Socialists are so far out there on. And I think, some conservative fiscal policy of, trying to pay off our debt and not waste money and lower tax dollars and give more power back to the people and to the states, and hopefully that'll maybe try to bring in some more votes from the other side, especially from Democrats who are maybe a little, wary of where their party's going and looking for somewhere else to go to.
But I go ahead.
100%. What I would say to him is that the Republican movement, the conservative movement, he might not agree with all of our values, but I think what he can see from our policies is that we are here for the American people, and the American people come first. And that's what we believe in, both in economics and in our policies for the people. And so what I would want to show him, and maybe we dive into this in a later podcast, is some of the issues of spending that we've seen in recent years with our budget, and say, okay, we need to dial this back, we need to dial this back, and we need to dial this back, and we need to dial this back. We need to spend money here, we need to not spend money there. And there's a bunch of ideas on that. But to go through that and then say, now that we have this, how can we put power back in the hands of the people? We are here for the people, and we are here to better their America. It's not let's better the government's America, or let's better the people at the very top. We are here to better the people's America, and that's what we stand for, because democratic socialism is not about the people. It's about the people at the top. It's about those at the very, very tippy top. But we're here for the people. From the farthest corner in Florida to the farthest corner in Seattle. We're here for all of them. And that's what I want to fight for. And that's what I believe that Bill Maher also wants to fight for. And we may agree, we may have differences on our belief on the path to get there in certain things, but I think what we can agree is that socialism does not even go that direction. It's going the opposite direction. And so I'd say, hey, buddy, vote in the direction of the American people.
I like the buddy. I think if you call Bill Maher buddy, that might be enough to not vote for you in that situation. No. I think there's a lot of what you guys just said. I think a lot of it's funny. I think both of you guys touched on the government spending side of things. Like, hey, let's reduce some of this. That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, we got to cut government spending down. We need to get out of the amount of debt we are. We need to find a way to make home ownership that much easier for especially young adults. It is so hard to buy a home as a young adult. How are we going to do that? Okay. We need to spend our money wisely as a government. We probably need to actually reduce parts of our, the million jobs that we have in the government that are unneeded. We need to find a way to be smarter economically. Okay. But also, like, one of my key hinging points would be like, Bill Maher, what's more sick? A UFC fight to celebrate July 4th, or a bunch of homosexual strippers on the lawn? No, I'm just kidding. But I think that there's a lot of things.
Ridiculous. That's not ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous to say that. No. And the other day I was actually talking to a friend of mine. He's a lot older than me. And he was like, I consider myself a moderate on a lot of things, but I'm the biggest capitalist you'll ever meet, because it makes sense. And as a fan of economics, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And if you go the other way, our market, our economy is just going to cripple really, really fast. And that's what you're seeing, not just out of the Democratic Socialists, but I think there's elements of that in the Democratic side as well. Not as much, hardly, but the Democratic Socialist side is really wanting to take the blinders off of that. And I think that would be my pitch to a lot of these people, is that, like, okay, like, they don't want, private capital. They don't want, Tyler, you're not allowed to have a plethora of things. All those guitars, yep, those are all gone. Like, you get clothes, you get your groceries, you get your farm, and that's it. And then on top of that, if you're going to eventually, once this becomes a communist country, then on top of that, you know what? You don't believe in what we're doing, then we're going to have public executions and public beatings, just like there was in the Soviet Union, which I'm not saying that all of that would happen. Like, I'm not promising. I can't say, like, oh yeah, for sure, this is exactly how it would go. Like, no, I'm not saying that, but that is historically what has happened. We can look at history and make conclusions off that. There's a reason that America operates differently than most countries. And it's the reason it's the most successful country on the planet ever to exist historically. And there's a reason for that. It's because we look at history. The founders looked at history. They said, okay, what works, what doesn't? And they built our nation on certain values, on certain principles, on certain Christian values that help promote a good country that is by the people, for the people. That's important.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's important to remember those values that our founders, built this country on. And that's where the democratic socialists just, they don't align with any of our founding fathers' ideals, any of their beliefs about what government's job is and how it's here for the people, like you said, and how it needs to be rooted in morality and is rooted in Christianity ultimately. And they just totally failed to recognize that or argue for that in their platform.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, like I said at the beginning, socialism is the cancer to the American dream. And I, with my whole heart, believe in the American dream. And it's what I wake up every day passionately excited about. And I hope to have innovation and become excellent in what I do and to pursue greatness to the highest degree. And I don't think socialism is going for that. And I think that we as Americans, as much as, we can joke, oh, socialism isn't going for that. We need to take this seriously because it's not just our lives, but it's our kids' futures and our kids' futures. And it's the future of this great nation that's on the line.
That's a great point. I think that's the crossroads we're at. Charlie Kirk made the claim many times that we are the first generation. We are the first generation that is living in a potentially worse country than our parents were living in. And I think that's important to realize, because a lot of what happened is that the generations above us just wanted to give us everything. They wanted to do everything. They wanted to make it easy for us. They just wanted to give us everything. And now you have, kids who don't know how to change a tire. You have kids who aren't going out and getting a job and they're just staying inside playing video games. And so what you're doing in that is you're creating a lack of that American dream, a lack of pursuit, a lack of passion, a lack of wanting to go and make America better. And I think what's going on right now, and we also talked about this, Maya, what's going on right now is you don't have enough young people willing to be like, okay, this is a problem. Nobody else is going to fix this but me. And I think more people need to have that mentality that, you know what? Yes, we want to fix the country for our sake as well. Of course, I do not want to live in a socialistic country. Yeah, I'm leaving if that's the case. All right. But along with that, we also want to make the country great so that, you know what, when I'm married and I have kids, they grow up in a safe country. They grow up in a stable economy. They grow up and they're able to buy a house soon after college. And that's exactly what we're all striving for, is not only easiness and affordability and security for our lives as well, but it's also for generations to come. And that's important, and realizing it's not all about you. It's not all about you. And if it's not all about you, then you have to start pulling on a rope that maybe takes a little bit more effort here, maybe takes a little bit more effort there, but it's worth it in the end. It is. It's a noble cause to fight for. America is a beautiful, beautiful country. It is okay to love your country. I promise you. It is. A lot of people tell you it's not because it's not perfect, but I would be hard pressed to find a perfect country in the history of the world. And I would say America is the very closest to that. And we're still very, very far away from perfection. So it's on all of us to help pick up that cross as well. Tyler, I want you to get a final word, and then Benaiah, your final word as well. And then we will wrap up. Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what you were saying about the whole, it's not always about us. And I think that's a big thing right now we see in the culture, a lot of, self-centeredness. And that's kind of what's behind this movement. So we want to ultimately leave a legacy and leave a country for our children and their children and generations on, because that's what the people before us did. They made greater sacrifices than we're ever going to have to make. I mean, you see the amount of young men our age who died fighting in the different wars to defend this country and keep our freedom. So the least we can do is go out into the public square and defend these ideas for future generations and for our children, so that they can be living in a better America than us and have the chance at greatness, like you were saying.
Great thought. Benaiah, go ahead.
Yeah. This nation was founded for the betterment of the people, not the bare minimum of the people. And that was the values we were founded on. Socialism is not for the betterment of the people. It's not for the excellence of the people, for people to pursue the highest standard. It is for the bare minimum. The people that socialism really serves are the elites at the top of the government. It doesn't support the average citizen and allowing that person to pursue greatness in whatever field they're in whatever they're passionate about. And so to America, I would say, if you are passionate about something, if you have a dream to become excellent in something, to make an impact, then you are against socialism. You are for capitalism. And that's what I stand for. That's what Jacob stands for. That's what Tyler stands for. That's what our founding fathers stood for. And that's not just something I want for me. That's something I want for my kids and their kids and for generations to come. And so that's what I'm going to stand for in this fight. In this fight against socialism, which I believe is the fight we are in and the fight our generation is going to be in, I am taking a stand for my life and for my kids' future and for the generation's future, and that future being a future with the pursuit of excellence and what you're passionate about and greatness in that.
Very well said. And I think it's super important. Okay, I'm going to preface this one time. We talked about it so much earlier, okay? But I'm going to preface this one time. It is so important that you understand what these terms mean. It's so important that you understand what is socialist ideology. It's so important. What is communism? What is Marxism? Where did this all come from? And we discussed that earlier on in the show, but I think so many people, one, don't understand the terms, two, don't understand the history, and three, really don't even understand the ideology. And so we're blindly supporting something just because of the name and because the guy's a good speaker. Okay. Zoran Mamdani, I'm a communications major. Give him credit. He's a good speaker. He's a good speaker. He's a good debater. With terrible ideas. Socialism does not work on a government level. It has been proven. Communism does not work on a government level. Well, it doesn't work well. And America is so much better off without it. And it's time that we, learn our history and we learn what these terms mean. And then we go out, just like Tyler said, and we fight in the square with ideas and we swing people one at a time towards the truth. You know what? That doesn't make sense. Let's swing towards the truth. Bill Maher, he said his, my vote's up for grabs. Great. So let's convince those people through, one, changing our party for the betterment of the people. Okay, there's things that the Republican Party can do better. There's things that the Democrat Party should never do at all. Okay, that some things they do, they need to, go to an insane asylum over. But just want to say thanks once again to you guys for being on the show. It's been awesome. I think it's a great conversation today, breaking down Zoran Mamdani in New York City, breaking down socialism, breaking down communism, breaking down Marxism. It was a great show. Thanks for you guys for coming on again today.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
All right, guys, that is going to wrap up. Oh, I put Tyler on screen there. That is going to wrap up our episode on socialism, Marxism, Mamdani, and New York City. Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, make sure I just posted a video on like a bunch of different social medias asking for requests. And let me tell you, I got some good topics requested on the social medias. They are going to be really, really fun. Have some really fun episodes coming your guys' way. Thank you guys for tuning in. Continue to share the videos. Continue to like the videos. Comment if you disagree. We're open to it. We love disagreement. We love talking about it. Comment topic ideas you guys have. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, your night, wherever you're listening to this at. And God bless America. God bless you guys, and have a great day.
It was never about Erica. It was never about
In whatever way possible, we need Christian leaders who have a good understanding of the Bible, to have a good understanding of what's going on in our nation as well, and then be able to communicate that effectively to the youth at the same time.